Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is wonderful to have you here with us.
It's good to be here.
Today, we are settling in for something that I think is going to be really special. We're continuing a journey we've been on all week, sort of peeling back the layers of a topic that is, well, it's both incredibly specific to one geographic place and yet completely universal in its themes.
Mm-hmm.
We are diving deep into the heart of Rutherford County, Tennessee.
That's right. And specifically, we are looking at this community through the lens of Black History Month. But the source material we have today, and we have some really rich stuff. Excerpts from Everyday Excellence, The Soul of Black Rutherford County.
Which is a Jack Diggs production.
Correct. And also insights from the Rutherford Chronicles. This isn't your standard history lesson. It's not just a dry list of dates and battles and legislation.
Exactly. It feels much more personal than that. It feels intimate.
It is intimate. I mean, the mission here, as it's laid out in our sources, is really to uncover the stories of individuals who don't always make the textbooks.
Right.
We so often look at history through the great man theory. Presidents, generals, famous inventors, the people whose names are on the buildings.
Sure, the headlines.
The headlines. But this deep dive is about the everyday heroes, the builders, the sustainers.
I love that distinction, the builders and the sustainers. It's so easy to focus on the person who, cuts the ribbon on a new library.
Exactly.
But we rarely talk about the people who keep the library open day after day, year after year. It's the difference between the headline and the actual article, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And just to orient you, the listener, because we are sort of dropping into an ongoing series here. If you were following the source materials context from earlier in the week, Monday was all about civic and educational legacies.
Okay.
We looked at the Scales family, Vincent Windrow, the McPhees.
Right. Those were the heavy hitters in education and civic life.
Yeah.
The people who were really establishing the systems.
And then Tuesday, it shifted a bit. It shifted to what they called the three pillars: body, mind, and spirit.
I remember that.
That covered Jerry Anderson, Coach Ricky Fields, and Pastor David Settles.
So we've covered the institutions, and we've covered the pillars. So where does that leave us today? I mean, what is the specific flavor of today's deep dive? Because looking at these notes, it feels different.
Today's about the fabric, the actual texture of the community.
Okay.
We are looking at everyday excellence. And the sources outline three specific archetypes that we are going to unpack. We have the heart, the memory, and the repair.
The heart, the memory, and the repair. I like that framework. It sounds almost anatomical, like we're dissecting a living organism.
In a way, we are. I mean, what is a community if not a living organism? It breathes, it grows, it can be wounded, and it can heal.
That's a great way to put it.
And the thesis here is really interesting. The sources suggest that true community resilience, the ability of a community to survive and thrive, it isn't just about leadership from the top down.
Right. Not just the mayor or the CEO.
No. It is about the custodian, the historian, and the healer working in tandem.
So we're talking about three specific people who embody these archetypes, not just concepts.
We are real people with real stories. We're going to be talking about Charles, Mr. Charlie Brandon, who represents the heart.
Okay.
We'll be discussing Katie Wilson, who represents the memory.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be looking at Pastor James M. McCarroll Jr., who represents the repair.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I think this idea of everyday excellence is something we all crave, but maybe don't always recognize until it's pointed out to us.
Yeah.
It's the invisible work.
Invisible is the key word there. It's the labor that goes unseen until it stops. And that brings us directly to our first focus.
The heart.
The heart. Mr. Charlie.
Mr. Charlie.
Charles, Mr. Charlie Brandon. Now, looking at the source material, the setting here is just crucial. We have to start there.
Where are we?
We are at the Patterson Park Community Center in Murfreesboro.
I can almost picture it. Community centers have a very specific energy, don't they?
They really do.
The squeak of sneakers on the basketball court, the smell of floor wax, kids running in 50 different directions.
A little bit of chlorine from the pool, maybe.
Yeah. It's organized chaos, but it's a happy chaos.
It is. And the sources highlight that for kids growing up in the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s in Black Murfreesboro, Patterson Park was central. It was everything.
It's the spot.
It was the spot. And at the center of that center was Mr. Charlie.
Now, let's be very clear about his role, his official title.
Right.
His title was custodian.
Correct. On the payroll, he was a custodian.
But the sources are very, very clear The custodian doesn't even begin to cover what he actually did.
Not even close. They describe him as a guardian and a quiet protector.
A quiet protector. I like that.
This is where we have to sort of challenge our assumptions about roles within a community. On paper, a custodian is there to clean, to maintain the physical plant, to empty the trash.
It's a functional role.
It's functional. But in a space full of children, full of teenagers, the person who holds the keys, the person who is always in the hallway, the person who sees everything, that person becomes a cultural anchor.
It's the eyes on the street concept, but indoors. Jane Jacobs talks about that, right? The eyes on the street making a neighborhood safe.
That's a perfect comparison.
Mr. Charlie was the eyes in the hallway.
It is exactly that. The sources say he was the one who broke up fights. He was the one who knew every single child's name.
Wow.
Now just stop and think about the power of that. Being known. For a kid, especially an awkward middle schooler or a teenager trying to figure out who they are, walking into a big, loud public space and having an adult look you in the eye and say your name.
That's everything.
It is. It's validating. It creates safety.
It grounds you. It says you exist and you matter enough for me to remember you.
Yes.
The source material uses this phrase that I wrote down, the third place parent figure. I think that's so poignant.
Let's dig into that third place concept for a second because it's so important. Sociologists often talk about the first place being home and the second place being work or school.
Right, your two main locations.
Exactly. The third place is where community happens. Churches, barbershops, coffee shops, and crucially, community centers.
The neutral ground.
A neutral ground. And you have your parents at home, maybe you have teachers at school, but then you have this third space, and you need a figure there, too, an adult anchor.
And often, that figure is more approachable than a teacher or a parent.
How so?
Well, a custodian doesn't grade you. A custodian doesn't ground you.
Right.
They just watch out for you. It's a different kind of authority. It's authority based on presence, not on power.
That's a great point. It's a non-transactional relationship. A teacher needs you to learn the material. A coach needs you to win the game. A parent needs you to clean your room.
Yes.
Mr. Charlie. He just needed you to be safe and to not scuff up his floors too much.
Maybe a little bit of that. But the testimonials in the source material are really moving. They just jump off the page.
They do.
People saying things like, Mr. Charlie helped raise us, and he kept us out of trouble.
And that phrase, helped raise us, that's not something you say lightly.
No, that implies so much more than just a friendly hello in the hallway. That implies advice. That implies intervention. That implies care.
And the last one, watched over us like we were his own.
It's a heavy thing to say about someone who was technically an employee of the building.
It completely blurs the line between a job and a vocation, doesn't it?
It suggests that he viewed his employment as a ministry of presence. That's what it was.
And that is the definition of the heart in this context. It's about presence. The source really highlights the value of simply showing up.
Yeah.
Day after day, week after week, year after year, not asking for recognition, not needing an award, just being there.
It's a form of reliability that creates a foundation for these kids to grow up on.
That's it.
I mean, in a world that can be so chaotic for young people, especially teenagers, having one constant adult who is always there, always the same, always kind, that stabilizes the whole ecosystem.
And the source notes, he influenced kids from the 80s all the way through the 2000s.
That's multiple generations of kids. That's incredible.
Think about that span of time. He saw the fashion change from high-top fades to baggy jeans. He saw the music change from boomboxes to Walkmans to iPods. The slang, the hairstyles, everything changed.
But he remained the constant.
He was the through line. But there is a tragic turn in this story. And I think this part of the source material really hits hard because it contrasts that warmth we've just been describing with something very, very cold.
It does. It's a gut punch. The timeline shifts to January 2014.
Right.
The sources describe a brutal cold snap.
Yes. We're talking about severe, dangerous, freezing temperatures, the kind of cold that makes the air hurt.
And Mr. Charlie, the man who kept everyone else warm and safe, the man who was the guardian of the community center,
The man who was the heart.
he was found frozen to death.
Yes. Behind a local business. He was 64 years old.
That is. It's just heartbreaking. There's an irony there that's almost literary in its tragedy.
I know.
The provider of warmth dying in the cold, it's almost too much.
It is deeply tragic, and it forces us to ask some really uncomfortable questions about how we care for our caretakers. You know, who was watching out for the watcher?
A question that often doesn't get asked until it's too late.
But what the source material focuses on primarily is the aftermath of that tragedy, the community's reaction,
The outpouring of grief.
a massive outpouring, and it says the community realized how much their childhoods were shaped by him only after he was gone.
It's that old adage, right? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. But in this context, it feels systemic.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, we often don't value the heart people, the custodians, the caretakers, the bus drivers, the lunch ladies. We don't value them with status or money until the heart stops beating. Then suddenly, everyone realizes the whole system is about to collapse.
That's the critical insight here from the sources. Excellence is often invisible until it is missed. We see the clean floors, but we don't see the man pushing the mop at midnight. We feel safe in the gym, but we don't see the person who's watching the door who knows which kids have beef with which other kids.
You don't notice the absence of trouble. You only notice trouble.
That's so true. The source argues that Mr. Charlie's excellence was in his consistency, in his presence. He was the heart because he kept the blood pumping through that community center, ensuring it was a place of life and safety, even if no one explicitly thanked him for it every single day.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If he'd been a mayor or a principal, maybe there would have been statues or plaques while he was alive.
Sure.
But because he was the heart, hidden inside the body, doing its vital work quietly, his function wasn't really celebrated until the shock of the loss.
And that is the nature of the everyday hero, isn't it? Their work is designed to be seamless. When they do their job perfectly, you don't notice anything is wrong.
You just feel safe. You just feel cared for.
You take it for granted. It's only when they're gone that you feel the draft. You feel the cold.
So if Mr. Charlie was the heart, the feeling, the safety, the constant steady presence, then we have to move to the next organ in this community body.
Yes, we have to move to the memory.
This brings us to Katie Wilson.
Katie Wilson.
And this feels like a shift, a significant shift, from the sort of physical protection that Mr. Charlie offered to a more intellectual or spiritual protection.
That's a really good way to put it. Katie Wilson is described in the sources as a living archive.
A living archive.
She's a 70-year-old respected elder in the community. And her story is incredible because it bridges some very, very significant eras in American history.
The source mentions she grew up during segregation.
Yes. And she didn't just grow up during it. She witnessed the civil rights movement firsthand. Marching, sit-ins, she was there.
So she wasn't a passive observer. She was a participant.
An active participant, and that historical context is just vital. When we talk about the memory, we aren't just talking about someone who remembers old birthdays. We are talking about someone who carries the institutional knowledge of the struggle.
The embodied history.
The embodied history. And there's a key milestone here. She graduated from Middle Tennessee State University, MTSU, in 1978.
Okay, 1978. Let's pause on that date for a second. This isn't, the very first black student ever to walk through the doors, but it's certainly part of that early integration era.
It is. The source calls it the early wave of black students transforming that specific campus.
And you have to imagine what it was like to be a black student on a Southern University campus in the late 70s.
I mean, the laws had changed on paper. The Civil Rights Act was passed. The Voting Rights Act was there. But the culture was still in flux, deeply in flux.
Right. Just because you can legally attend the class doesn't mean you are welcomed in the study group.
Precisely. It was likely a time of incredible isolation, a time where you had to prove your right to be there every single day in every single interaction.
Her graduation wasn't just getting a degree. It was a statement. It was a claim on the space.
It absolutely was. And this is the crucial part of her story. She didn't just take that degree and leave.
Right. She didn't say, okay, I got my education, I'm out of here. I'm moving to a big city where it's easier.
No, she stayed. She invested that knowledge, that resilience, right back into the community that raised her. She served as president of the Murfreesboro branch of the NAACP.
That is a role that requires a huge amount of resilience. It's a thankless job in many ways.
No, absolutely. Guiding an organization like that through advocacy and growth takes a toll.
Yeah.
It involves constant negotiation, constant vigilance, constant fundraising,
In dealing with pushback.
constant pushback. But the sources point out that while she led the organization, her true passion, her real mission, was the youth. Mentoring, serving as a bridge between generations. And this is where the concept of the memory becomes active, not passive. It's not a dusty old book on a shelf.
What do you mean by that? Active, not passive.
Well, she wasn't just sitting in a rocking chair remembering the past for her own nostalgia. She was actively passing those stories down to young people. She was making the past relevant to the present.
Okay, so why is that distinction so important? Why the memory and not just, say, the historian?
Because of the current climate. And the source material explicitly brings up a statistic that puts this whole thing in a very sharp, very urgent perspective.
Okay.
It notes that more than 2,700 books are currently being considered for removal from schools and libraries across the country.
2,700 books. That is a massive number. It's hard to even wrap your head around that.
It is. And the source is clear that many of those books document Black history, the history of racism or diverse perspectives, stories that challenge a simple, clean narrative of the past.
Wow. So when the physical records, the books, the documentaries, the curriculum, when those things are being actively challenged or removed,
The person who holds the story in their head, in their lived experience,
becomes infinitely more valuable.
infinitely. In that climate, Katie Wilson isn't just a storyteller. The source calls her a guardian of truth.
A guardian of truth.
And it describes the act of preserving history as an act of resistance.
That's a powerful phrase. Preservation as resistance. It implies that forgetting isn't a passive process. It's something that is being done to you, and remembering is how you fight back.
Exactly. It reframes memory from a nostalgic act to a political one, a necessary one.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes you think about the fragility of history.
It's incredibly fragile.
If it's only on paper, paper can be burned or banned,
Mm,
or just lost to time in an attic.
right.
But if it's woven into the minds of the youth through mentorship, through oral tradition, which is exactly what Katie Wilson represents, it's much harder to erase.
It's a different kind of storage device. It's a living hard drive. She ensures the memory survives when the physical books are challenged.
It reminds me of the concept of the griot in West African tradition.
Yes, absolutely.
The keeper of the genealogy, the keeper of the oral history, the person who could recite the history of the village for days. Without the griot, the village forgets who it is. It loses its identity.
That is exactly the archetype Katie Wilson is fulfilling here. And the source emphasizes that she is doing this work now. She is a respected elder today. This isn't some historical figure from 1890 we're reading about.
Right. This is someone you can go talk to. This is a living resource.
And the urgency the source places on this is palpable. It's not stated, but it's there between the lines.
Because elders don't last forever.
Exactly. There's a saying, when an elder passes, a library burns down.
Wow. I never heard that before, but that's powerful.
It is, unless they have transferred that knowledge, unless they have mentored the next generation of librarians.
Which is what she's doing.
That's why her mentorship is so critical. She is, in effect, downloading the archive into the next generation. She is saying, this is what we marched for, this is what it felt like, this is what we overcame. That gives the current generation a roadmap. It gives them context for their own lives.
So we have the heart Mr. Charlie, keeping the kids safe in the present, giving them a foundation of care. And now we have the memory Katie Wilson, keeping the past alive for the future, giving them a foundation of identity.
Exactly.
And that leads us to the third pillar of this episode, the repair.
Pastor James M. McCarroll, Jr.
And this story, I have to say, this story is fascinating because it deals with a very tangible physical division in the town.
It's a visible scar.
The source calls it the tale of two churches.
It really is a striking visual of history. The source explains that in Murfreesboro, there are two First Baptist churches.
Just to be clear, they have the exact same name. That's got to be confusing for the mailman.
Essentially the same name. You have First Baptist Church on East Main Street, which is historically white.
Okay.
And you have First Baptist Church on East Castle Street, which is historically black.
And the source material explains the origin of this split, right? It goes all the way back to the Civil War.
It does. We have to go back to that post-Civil War Reconstruction moment. Emancipation has happened. Formerly enslaved African Americans are free. They were religious. They want to worship. But within the white church structure of the time, they were essentially denied equality and leadership.
So they were told, you can be here, but you can't lead. You can sit in the balcony, but you can't stand in the pulpit, that sort of thing.
Exactly. It was a spiritual glass ceiling, a theological Jim Crow. So they did what so many black communities did in that era.
They formed their own.
They formed their own. And importantly, they took the name First Baptist, asserting their right to be the first, to be primary, to be legitimate.
So that was an act of defiance, in a way, keeping the name.
Absolutely. It was a statement of equality, a declaration, we are First Baptists too. But for over a century, these two congregations existed in the same town, worshiping the same God, using the same name, but completely divided by race, history, and custom.
It's that separate but equal doctrine played out the pews. It's a visual scar on the city map, like you said.
It is two churches, separated by just a few blocks, but 1,000,000 miles of history.
1,000,000 miles of unspoken history.
Exactly, a century of unspoken weight, as the source puts it. Everyone in town knew why there were two churches. It was the elephant in the room that was 100 years old.
So this is where Pastor McCarroll comes in. He's been the senior pastor at the East Castle Street Church, the historically black church, since 2006.
That's right.
And his archetype is the repair. So what did he do? I mean, did he just say, hey, let's all have a picnic together?
It was so much deeper than that. He didn't just propose a superficial merger. He initiated a process of reconciliation.
Okay.
Under his leadership, the two congregations began worshiping and serving together.
Now that sounds nice on paper, worshiping together, but given the history you just laid out, that must have been incredibly complex.
Immensely complex.
You have generations of hurt on one side and maybe generations of guilt or indifference or just plain awkwardness on the other.
It is immense. The source emphasizes that this repair wasn't about ignoring the history. This is the critical part. It wasn't about saying, hey, let's just forget the last 100+ years and sing a song together.
Right. Let bygones be bygones.
No. It was about acknowledging the history that divided them. It was about looking the elephant right in the eye.
That's the key, isn't it? You can't repair a crack in the foundation by just painting over it.
You can't.
You have to actually look at the crack. You have to understand why the crack is there in the first place.
Right, and the repair here is spiritual, communal, and historical. It requires navigating that century of separation. It's about healing the wound, not just putting a bandage on it.
Which has to involve some uncomfortable conversations.
It has to. It requires vulnerability from the leadership and from both congregations. It means the historically white church has to confront its past, and the historically black church has to be willing to engage in a process that could open old wounds.
The source mentions that this is about acknowledging the history that divided them. That feels like a very courageous act for a pastor. It's risky.
It's incredibly risky.
You could alienate people on both sides who prefer the status quo, who are comfortable in their separation.
Of course. But the repair is necessary for the community to move forward. If you are stuck in the divisions of 1865, you cannot effectively navigate the challenges of 2024. Pastor McCarroll saw that.
And the impact of his work goes beyond just these two church buildings, right? The source mentions some pretty staggering numbers regarding community support.
It does, and this is where the repair becomes tangible. The church has given more than $1.3 million in community support over 6 years.
$1.3 million.
Yes, that is tangible. That is economic impact.
Wow. That's not just thoughts and prayers. That's rent checks. That's scholarship funds. That's food pantries. That is direct intervention.
Exactly. And McCarroll's influence extends nationally through coaching and writing. But let's just stick to that number for a moment. $1.3 million. In a community, that money represents stability. It represents families not getting evicted. It represents kids going to college who might not have otherwise.
So this is where the repair becomes practical. It's not just repairing relationships. It's repairing the economic breaches in the community.
Yes, healing the material wounds as well as the spiritual ones.
The source makes a broader point here about the role of the black church in general. It calls it a cornerstone of community resilience and a protector of black dignity.
That phrase, protector of black dignity, is just crucial. We have to understand the sociological role of the black church in a world that often tried to strip that dignity away, whether through Jim Crow segregation laws, economic exclusion, or just the daily microaggressions of racism.
The church was the one place you could go where that wasn't the case.
It was the place where dignity was restored. It was the place where you weren't boy or girl, you were deacon or mother or sister. You had a title, you had a leadership role.
You were a leader. You had agency.
You were a child of God, you had status, you had respect. Pastor McCarroll's work in the repair is about taking that internal dignity that the church has cultivated for over a century and using it to engage the wider world. It's about engaging the community from a place of strength, not a place of deficit.
So he's not going to the other church with his hand out asking for help.
No.
He's going to the other church offering partnership.
Exactly. That is the essence of the repair. It is a partnership of equals, finally addressing the inequality of the past.
So we have these three figures, Mr. Charlie, Katie Wilson, Pastor McCarroll. The heart, the memory, the repair.
And if we zoom out, we can see how they interlock. You can't have a functioning community ecosystem without all three. They're not independent.
Walk me through that. How do they depend on each other? Because on the surface, a custodian, a historian, and a pastor seem like they're operating in very different lanes.
They are different lanes, but they are driving toward the same destination. Think about it. You need the heart, Mr. Charlie, to provide the immediate day-to-day safety and care.
Okay, the foundational level.
The foundation. Without that, the children don't survive their youth in a healthy way. They don't have a third place to belong. They get lost to the streets or they withdraw into themselves.
Right. If you don't feel safe, you can't learn, and you certainly can't think about history or reconciliation. Your brain is just focused on survival.
Exactly. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Safety comes first. But safety isn't enough. You can be safe and still be empty.
True.
So you need the memory, Katie Wilson. You need to know who you are and where you came from. You need that intergenerational wisdom and truth, especially when the outside world is trying to hide it from you or give you a distorted version of it.
So you have safety, and then you have identity. Mr. Charlie gives you a safe room to be in.
Yeah.
Katie Wilson decorates that room with pictures of your ancestors so you know you belong there.
That's a beautiful analogy, yes. And then, once you're safe and you know who you are, you need the repair, Pastor McCarroll.
Why then?
Because communities are wounded. History leaves scars. Structures are broken. You need a mechanism for healing, for structural change, and for economic support. You need a vision for how to move forward together, not just as individuals, but as a collective.
It's a tripod.
It is.
If you remove one leg, the whole thing falls over.
Precisely. If you have safety and memory but no repair, you are stuck in the past. Safe but stagnant, reliving old grievances. If you have repair and safety but no memory, you are moving forward but you don't know who you are. You're rootless. You're likely to repeat the mistakes of the past because you don't know what they were.
And if you have memory and repair but no safety?
Then the foundation crumbles because the kids aren't protected. The next generation doesn't make it through to receive the memory or participate in the repair.
Wow. It's a complete system.
It's a living system.
This brings us back to the title of the deep dive, Everyday Excellence. It really redefines the word excellence, doesn't it?
It completely reframes it.
We usually think of excellence as being the best athlete or the richest CEO or the most famous actor. Excellence as exceptionalism.
We think of excellence as being the one person who escapes the orbit, the one who makes it out.
Yes.
But the argument here in these sources is that true excellence is local, it is lived, and it is alive. It's about the foundation, not the spire on the skyscraper.
It's about the people who stay.
It's about the people who stay and build. You can build a skyscraper of achievement, but if the foundation, the care, the memory, the healing isn't there, it won't stand for long.
Local, lived, and alive. I like that. It's not abstract. It's not on TV. It's right down the street. It's the person you see every day.
And referring back to what you mentioned earlier about the banned books and the challenging of stories, the sources emphasize that we are telling these stories out loud specifically because of that context. This isn't just a feel-good history lesson.
Right. This isn't just trivia. This is an assertion of value in a moment where that value is being questioned.
Yes. In a time of erasure, speaking these names, Charles Brandon, Katie Wilson, James McCarroll, is an affirmative act. It's a declaration that these lives mattered and their work continues to matter.
They aren't just stories. They're blueprints.
That's a great image. They aren't just history, they are blueprints. A blueprint is something you use to build something new. They are active blueprints for how a community sustains itself today. We can look at Mr. Charlie and ask, how do I build safety in my sphere of influence?
Right.
We can look at Katie Wilson and ask, what truth do I carry that I need to pass on? How do I preserve our story?
And we can look at Pastor McCarroll and ask, where is the divide in my community, and what is one small step I can take to bridge it?
They're a call to action.
So here is where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. We've talked about Rutherford County. We've talked about Patterson Park and East Castle Street. But these archetypes, the heart, the memory, the repair, they exist everywhere.
Absolutely. That raises the important question. Who are they in your world?
Right. Who is the Mr. Charlie in your local community center or school? Who is the invisible guardian making sure the kids are safe? The person you might walk past every day without really seeing?
And who is the Katie Wilson? Who is the elder holding on to the history of your neighborhood, waiting for someone to ask them about it?
Who has the photo albums?
Yeah.
Who knows why that street is named what it's named?
And who is doing the repair? Who is doing the hard, uncomfortable, often thankless work of bringing divided groups together? Who is crossing the tracks, literally or figuratively?
And we often overlook them. We overlook them because they aren't seeking the spotlight.
Not at all. Mr. Charlie didn't have a PR team. Katie Wilson isn't looking for a reality show. Pastor McCarroll is doing the work regardless of the applause.
But if this deep dive teaches us anything, it's that we need to see them. We need to honor them because they are the soul of the community.
Absolutely. And listen, this is just one part of the story. The source material encourages everyone to continue following this series all month long.
There's more to come.
There is an open invitation from the Rutherford Chronicles to join in honoring these builders and sustainers, past and present. There are so many more stories to uncover. This deep dive covered 3 people, but there are thousands of everyday heroes out there.
So don't stop here. Look for the excellence in your own backyard. It's there, quiet and steady, holding everything together.
Yeah, it certainly is.
That does it for this deep dive into everyday excellence. We'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.